I'm up here in Jeremy Ranch. Won't really do a big of an intro because I've done videos up here already. But over to the right is, just so you have an idea where I'm at, over to my right is Bob's Basin, where you have the downhill trails right over there. But I'm actually not going to be riding those except for when I come back down. I'm actually going with the Flying Dog. It's a loop. It's up higher on the other side of the hills here. It's really pretty up here in the spring. Come about another month and it won't be this green. It'll be pretty brown up here. But it's a really good place if you want to go bird watching. In fact, that hill to the right over there on the other side is actually a wildlife, I don't know if they call it a sanctuary. Not sure what they designate it here. But they'll have signs everywhere of all different bird species you'll see. So I'm coming to the fork here. If you turn right, that would take you to the downhill trails. I am actually going to go left. Those hills right in front of me here, the Flying Dog's up on the other side of that. So you can see how the plant life changes when you get on the other side of a hill. See how the aspen grove over on the left, and it's dry over here. Go to like a south-facing hillside and it'll be a little bit drier because it gets more direct sunlight. And you go on north-facing, doesn't get as much sunlight, but it also gets a little more moisture. It's not as dry, so you got more trees. So you see when you get in the trees, you got a lot more undergrowth. So you have a lot of trees, the roots basically grab onto the soil, prevents runoff, so you get a thicker soil, which promotes more plant growth. That's why deserts, you don't see really thick vegetation. Anytime it rains, it just washes the soil away. It's hard for... There's a spotted towhee. It's up in the tree right here. Just flew off. So when you're in a desert environment, you notice a lot of the plants, they're not very tall. So you're in an open environment like this, deserts have a lot of wind. So what's the most important resource in a desert for actually both plants and animals? That's right, water. So if you have a tall plant with big leaves and you put in a desert environment with all that wind, you get what's called evaporative cooling. As the air rushes over a surface area and there's moisture, it just sucks the moisture out. The air basically grabs that moisture and pulls it off the surface. You don't want that in a desert environment. So that's why also you see all these plants here, they have really small leaves. And they're also really low to the ground, because lower to the ground, you have less exposure to the air. And I don't know if you can see it all that well on here. I don't know if it's going to focus. I pull it off, pull these leaves off this little plant here. I don't remember what that is. But if you see, there's little hairs on there, on the leaves. And what the hairs do, that inhibits the movement of air across the leaf surface. And that also minimizes the evaporative uptake of moisture from the leaf. So basically the way plants work is on the underside of the leaves there's little pores. They're called stomata. They're kind of like sweat glands on our bodies. They open and close, And what it does is, as it does that, the moisture comes out, and what it does, it causes a pressure difference between the air and the ground, and that pressure difference causes the uptake of water from the soil. It's called transpiration instead of perspiration in us. That's how plants take up water. Yeah, it's kind of neat though. It's kind of a neat adaptation. Those little hairs on the leaves there. So I was going to mention with the evaporative cooling on plants. If you ever are exerting yourself and really sweating, and you happen to sit in front of a fan, or it's really windy, and it feels really cool all of a sudden, that's evaporative cooling. So back there, all the trees are, was kind of in a little gully there, so you have a little more water that kind of congregates there. So it will support more plant life in that little area than out here where it gets drier. There's not much water here. I mentioned both plants and animals adapting to a desert environment. I think one of the coolest ones is horned lizards, thorny devils. They're little lizards, and as the name implies, on the back of their head they have these little horns. They're actually really cool looking little guys. They sound evil or dangerous, but they're actually really docile. I mean, I'm not saying you go and find one, pick one up, but they're not aggressive. But anyway, they've adopted this method where on their scales they have these little channels in their scales, and all the channels lead to their mouth. So on the early morning they have dew that'll actually collect on their body. Well, the dew, through what's called capillary action, the water just channels right to their mouth. That's how they get their water. It's a very efficient way of getting water in a desert environment. Okay, I'm at the fun part of flying dog. I came up right here. It was still climbing. I was on flying dog for a little bit, but this section right here, this is where it gets fun. So I don't have this trail memorized or anything. But as I mentioned earlier, this is a multi-use bi-directional trail, so you have to be kind of careful, come around turns. I'm actually trying to think if I've actually even been on this trail on this bike. I can't remember. couldn't quite see what kind of bird that was on the trail. So I just crested over the hill. Now I'm heading back down to where I started. This part's pretty fun too. It's basically gonna be all downhill except for one small part where I have to crest those little hills to the right. So to the left, that's where I climbed up. Be able to get a good view of this creek that comes along here in the riparian habitat. I'm not sure if you saw it in the camera, there was a brewer's blackbird that flew by.